Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. You know, back in the 80s, when my guest was he was everywhere on MTV, and there was two people. I used to go to a barber, not a hairdresser, called Evelyn at Cut and Curl in Voorhees, New Jersey. And I went there, and I took two pictures in my whole time there. One was of Simon Le Bon, and one of my guests today. And I said, I want my hair to look like that, because these guys were the best hair in that day. And he's such an amazing voice, and he toured with my buddies from the Hooters, and my guest is Paul Young. How you doing, Paul?
Yeah, I'm doing great, Steve. Thanks.
Your hair still looks great. You in the 80s, you had like the best hair. I mean, even the first video you had, the first album, you had that great hair. But what was it about English rockers that you guys just had such a great hair and fashion? Was it the industry? I mean, what made you guys look like just you stood out above so many American rockers?
Yeah, I think it was definitely the industry, the way things were going in the UK, and fashion has always been a strong part of the UK with the designers that we've had and things like that. And also we've always got an eye on the quirky, so the designers were getting pretty crazy, and so fashion became more important. And a lot of people that love music, they're also drawn to fashion as well. And they just started to merge together. And then with the invention of, or the use of video as a promotional tool, and then eventually MTV, it became more and more important along the way. But fashion's always been there. I did go through a curious phase when I was at the end of the soul band I was in, and I decided to do a Phil Oakey, Heat of Human League. So I had it cut really short on one side and then grew the top bit long and all swept over one side. And I must admit, it didn't look very soulful. So it wasn't the best band to have that change of hairstyle. And the same management team carried on through to the solo deal. And he kind of kindly said, I think we need to stop with the change in the hairstyles and things like that. And the one you always looked best in was the spiky kind of, hair. And I went, oh yeah, all right then, I'm fine with that.
I'm bald now, so you have hair. I always appreciate it. Seriously, you don't even know what us guys in America, we were sitting there going, because all the girls in my college, I graduated college in 86 at Stockton State in New Jersey, they were all going crazy about you guys. And we were like, how do we look like those guys? And it was so frustrating because no stores in the Philadelphia area had clothes like you guys had.
Yeah, that's right. We had a lot to choose from. It was always curious. There was some fashion that was way ahead of the other stuff, but it was equally balanced with in the early days with people like from Johnson's Taylor, who used to fit out Elvis Costello and Madness and all these type of bands, and there was a little bit of the rockabilly side of it going on as well. We love the Stray Cats. They came over and I think they hit the UK bigger than they had in America at that point. And so that was where the Q-Tips got their clothes from when I was in the soul band. And then it kind of, it carries on through from there. And on the same street, on the King's Road, you would have everything from leftover punk to this slightly kind of rockabilly stuff to the really wacky, the Vivienne Westwood stuff, They were all very close to each other.
So you have such a great voice, and I always wonder, when does someone find out they have a great voice? I know you started playing piano at a very young age, but what got you into music? Was your family, were your parents a musical? Did they love music, or what got you into music? And when did you find out that you had this amazing voice?
Well, I was a middle child, and I think middle children seem to be a little bit more inside themselves. So music was very much a bedroom thing with me, and I used to play a lot of music. Piano didn't last very long, but I did become a bass player in a couple of local bands first, and that kind of, I learned what makes records, really. I didn't think I'd ever be a great bass player. I was a good bass player. Couldn't play guitar that well. I had a stutter in my voice, and I think my fingers had the same problem, so it never would have happened.
So I was singing a little bit in my local band,
And it just so happened that we had another singer, but I said that I wanted to sing some, so they let me do a few songs in the middle of the show. And when it came to writing songs, the songs that the band ended up writing suited my style of singing more than the other guys, who was more of a Robert Plant type vocalist. So the only demos we did were ones that I sang on, and then shortly after that, a band from North London came to the same studio, and they were recording their demos, and happened to say they were looking for a lead singer. The guy that ran the studio said, "Oh, we had a band through the other day, and this guy was good. He was really good, you know." And he played him something. And the next thing I know, I get a phone call from this band from North London, and asking if they can speak to my mum and dad. And they said, "Is it all right if your son joins our band? We'll look after him," you know, that type of thing. So that was the first time I thought, "Oh, I've got a voice then," you know. And I always felt that I was okay, you know, and I thought the things that I was listening to were a good influence on how my style became. But it was only when I joined the soul band for a fleeting moment. I was in a rock band, après punk, called Streetband, and when we had a little sojourn for a while because the guitarist was getting married in Germany. And so we got a brass section and carried on doing our shows that were in the calendar as a soul band, you know, instead of a rock band. And then we just did that for 3 weeks, and then we're back to the usual rock stuff. But in the back of my mind, I was going, "Oh, I really enjoyed singing all those Sam and Dave songs and all that kind of thing. I think that really feels like my style, you know." And then it started to evolve.
Was soul your early influence? Because I know you grew up in England, and so I know, like for us, we grew up in hearing Springsteen and hearing that, but you know, because New Jersey, Philadelphia based. But who were your influences? You know, I talked to so many people who the Beatles were so influential, but who were your influences at an early age? Because I think early age shapes our musical taste for our lifetime.
Does, yeah. Well, I actually started off with. Almost anybody that was on Island Records. When Chris Blackwood started Island Records, I loved Free. They were my favourite band of all time. I thought Paul Rodgers was the most amazing vocalist, but each musician in their own right. The bass, Andy Fraser played bass like no one else I'd ever heard, and I just thought. And then I started hearing more and more bands on Island Records. They even turned me on to the softer side of their stuff. I'm trying to think of there was a guy called Nick Drake that I really liked, and I also liked the wacky side of things like King Crimson and all things like that, surprisingly. But it was when I would read interviews with Paul Rodgers, and he'd always mention Wilson Pickett, Otis Redding, you know, that type of thing. And I thought, I've got to check this out, and so I did. I started going to the local record store, one of those great ones where you go in and ask them, "Have you got anything by?" And they know everything they've got, you know, the record stores you only dream of. And so then I started getting more and more into soul from that moment on. So I had a blues rock base, and I was building on it with soul.
Isn't it amazing how record stores were so important? I remember going to South Street in Philadelphia and going to Tower Records, and my roommate from college was from Hong Kong. And I got Roxy Music's greatest hits, and there was one left, and I knocked him over because he was smaller than me. But it influenced us, and that's what is amazing about music. Like, your music influences people, and then people listen to it and love it. But isn't it amazing that people, we still listen to music and love it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that once you get into music, and especially for us that were born at a lucky age where we saw it changed through the decades and the generations. And so we were almost forced. We all started off just liking one thing, but then our taste gets broader. But there was so much that was on offer in the 80s, and so much music that was coming into the UK. And I was influenced by reggae, and African music was just getting big. Juju music on the one side, with King Sunny Day, and then High Life music, which was a much more up-tempo, upbeat sort of thing, you know. And so by the time I got to doing the solo stuff, I thought, right, well, I've left all these things I'm listening to, Tom Tom Club and all stuff like that, because I'm in a soul band. But I thought, now I'm going to use all these things that I'm listening to, and they're all going to come into the mix, you know. And that's how I got there.
So tell me about the Q-Tips. That was like your first big break. You were like a star. You were like a heartthrob in England with the Q-Tips, right? Tell me about that, because I want to find out how you transitioned that to your amazing solo career.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't really a heartthrob in the Q-Tips. In fact, I always thought, well, you know, when you go and see a band, I thought I was doing quite a good job of being a frontman. And then we'd played at university somewhere, because we've got no security, so people are wandering in and they're chatting away. So some guy was chatting away with me saying what a great night it was, what a brilliant band. And after about 10 minutes, he went, which instrument do you play? I went, I'm the lead singer. The guy that was up the front, he did not see me. So I thought, well, am I not getting this right? You know, but then it was a massive change then when when No Parlez became so big, and it was turned on to a much younger audience. You know, they were screaming and they were trying to grab the mic stand or the mic lead and all stuff like that. And I was worried because I'd got a few moves. I thought I might hit them with the mic stand if I'm not careful. And I said to my manager, you know, I don't get it. I'm doing all the same things I was doing in the Q-Tips, and everybody just enjoyed it. Now I'm doing them, and then they're screaming at everything I'm doing. He said, don't worry, you're just as dumb as you always were. It ain't going to change you.
Yeah, you know, it's funny how people don't recognize you. I do stand-up comedy,
yeah.
And I've done shows before where I get off stage and someone's looking at me going, yeah, they didn't recognize. And I took my hat off, and they're like, yeah, you know, that second act sort of sucked. I'm like, oh, thank you, that was me. So it's just weird how people absorb a show, but they don't observe it and see who it is.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose they're taking in the whole thing. They're looking at the brass section, the dance routine. And when our keyboard player used to play, if he got really carried away, he'd push the Hammond organ around the stage. He'd be so into the thing, you know. So there's plenty going on in this band. It was a great band to go and see live, you know. And I guess there was so much of that going on. He didn't really put a face with the sound or whatever. But it was good, you know, because my manager had been my agent before he was my manager, so we knew each other really well. We called ourselves the Laurel and Hardy of the music business. So we're always taking the mickey out of each other, you know.
So you're with the Q-Tips. When did you decide to go solo, and what was your path to getting that first record deal? Because the first record did very well. The second record blew up. But what was your path? Because you always hear stories in the 80s, like the metal scene in Sunset Boulevard. You know, people just started getting deals from them. And I'm sure, you know, there was a movement in England. But what was your path from leaving the Q-Tips to getting that first record deal?
Because things were moving on. Q-Tips were a part of a mod scene that was only going to be around for about 3 years or 4 years. So I started to worry about where we were going to take it. And I tried to bring some material in that was not as retro as our earlier material, and they weren't really going for it. So I kind of pocketed those. And so I'd got those songs. And really the shape of the album, although I did a lot of covers, the shape of the album came from the songs I'd written. Because once I got in to make a demo of them, and I thought, right, well, we've got a drummer in, but we're going to get him to program a drum pattern, you know, and we might put real drums on, but we ended up not. And then I said, I've always loved the sound of a synth bass, so then I put a synth bass on the demos, and then straight away, then it didn't sound like I originally thought they would, and I just let my voice get influenced by what the music was doing. And around about that, that happened after that helped to secure the deal. But what happened was the Q-Tips weren't getting. We didn't get our contract renewed, and we couldn't get another one because no one wanted 7-piece soul band. They'd got Soft Cell, and they've got all these synth pops bands. It's just a keyboard player and a singer. They'd signed Spandau Ballet, you know, and I thought, well, they look nothing like us, you know, kilts on and all this wacky stuff. So and the record company said, we don't want a soul band, but we love the singer. And as I say, the management had been my agent for the previous band. And he said, well, I'm managing the Q-Tips because you told me you were in them, and I think you've got something. So you need to know that I've had 3 labels asking if you're interested in a solo deal. So I had to go away and think about that, because I'd been doing it for 6 years, and I thought, well, where am I going to go now? I've got some ideas, and I kept the keyboard player, Ian Cooley, who'd been to music college and was a good arranger. We'd just springboard off each other.
Well, a lot of people go through doubt. When you're an artist, I always say artists we're 50% narcissistic, we're 50% insecure. It works. I mean, it's because we want to hear it, but then we get it, we go, oh. So when you were leaving the Q-Tips, and even though you had people reaching out to you, did you have any doubts, like what's going to happen when I'm a solo, because you're associated with that old band? I mean, what were your thoughts when you were transitioning to a solo career?
Well, the first song we did that was a cover was Iron Out the Rough Spots that Steve Cropper wrote with Don Cavay. But it wasn't very well known, not well known at all. So I thought, well, this way, if we come up with a different arrangement for this song, I can still sing in an R&B way, in R&B style, but everything around me is going to be much more modern. And so that was the most basic way I can tell you that I began to found my new sound, and that's what it was really. It was an amalgamation of a lot of things. And so the Tom Tom Club, I was thinking the Rapid Wording, what is it called, I think, and it had all these strange little noises, a bit like the B-52s used to do as well. So that's what we did. We put loads of little quirky synth sounds and assigned each sound a pattern, so they used to repeat at odd times. And then I really got into recording in the studio then and started to enjoy it. And before, it was just a case of setting up in the studio and playing, but now I'm creating, and it was a lot of fun.
So you get a hit on your first album, and what is that like? You're someone who you had some success with the Q-Tips, but what is that like as an artist to sit there and go, I have a hit, and then we always hear the story about you have a hit, your next album, we need another hit. I mean, what is that like for you when you started getting? You shot the first video. I remember the first video off the first album. You had the short hair in the back, then you got the long hair later, which I wanted to have. But what was it like? What did you sit there and think about doing when you have a first hit? What is going on in your mind for your next move?
Well, I would say I was quite brash, and I wasn't frightened about it. For some reason, I seemed very confident that I felt that I was going somewhere, so I wasn't that worried. But to go from no hits with the Q-Tips, we had a lot of radio play because I played lots of college events where there were DJs that were also on the radio, and they'd seen me and heard me. And so when I went solo, they gave me a lot of radio time because DJs had that influence back then.
Yeah.
Don't anymore. So I'd got interest from in the right places, and so they gave me airtime, and Iron Out the Rough Spots got a load of play, but it wasn't here. And then, but the next one was Wherever I Lay My Hat, and that was a very drastically different arrangement of a Marvin Gaye song, and I think that caught everybody's attention at this point because it was so stripped down. There was almost nothing apart from a drum box, some synth wash keyboards, and a very funky bass line, that stood out from everything else at that point, with the voice on top. So it sounded unlike anything else that was in the chart, and I think it captured everybody's imagination. So then, and from then on, it was Come Back and Stay. It was also a hit. So, and we had another hit in Europe, but not in America, with a copy of a version of Love Will Tear Us Apart. So in the end, it spawned 4 or 5 hits, and I think in that decade, or maybe CBS's sales that year or that decade, No Parlez was second only to Thriller as their biggest record that they'd ever had.
See, that's amazing because I know No Thriller was so huge in America. Now, when you're blowing up, you have these hits. You start touring. I know you toured. You did 12 dates with the Who. What? Okay, so you go. You're a guy who was in the Q-Tips, and you probably weren't playing huge venues. So, what was your touring progression to end up being with the Who? Which, as someone from the UK in England, or as me as a music fan, I remember seeing them at the Spectrum in Philadelphia in 1979. I was a junior in high school. What was that like? Like, how do you acclimate to being in front of these huge crowds? Because first of all, they're there to see the Who, and but you have to deliver, and you have this vast audience. What was your tour? What was your tour level?
Well, at that point, the Q-Tips were still high, riding quite high, and so we were very confident in ourselves. And I think that they liked the idea of having me on there because I think it was maybe Roger's choice because he always loved that kind of big band soul thing, and then Pete chose a band that he would like to do a few shows, but it just turned out that when it got to Wembley, one band had started their tour, 9 Below Zero had, and the other one was the Ruts, and one of them was ill or something and couldn't do it. So we ended up doing all 6 nights at Wembley as well, and we toured on the road with the Who, and we got to know them quite well. And it's kind of freaky to think that I grew up as a kid watching these people on these TV black and white pop shows in the 60s, and now here I am with this band, and I got to say they are one of my favourite bands, and will be ever. I think if you talk about rock bands, there's only one really. You got heavy rock, you got heavy metal, and you got this. Talk about a great rock band. I don't think anybody beats the Who, And so I was very pleased to be on the road with them. I think that was another thing that actually probably caught the attention of people.
So how do you command an audience? I mean, it's not a bar. It's not a 2,000-seat venue. It's fucking Wembley. I mean, how do you sit there and go in front of all these people? Because the bottom line is, I do stand-up, as I said, and I'll be in front of a crowd of, I was at City Winery, and I was in front of a crowd of 400, and that was intimidating. But there's a big stage, so you're walking, and you feel great, and you're like, oh. But this is Wembley. I mean, and as a kid from England, you're in Wembley. How do you go on stage and not lose your shit?
Well, it happened a couple of times. I mean, when I was in Streetband, we did a one night with David Essex was very big at the time, and me and Drew had a band called the Rich Kids, and it was us. So that was the first time I ever played Wembley. That was really weird because we'd gone from playing clubs really, and we played there. So the next time I went there was supporting the Who, and all of the theatres were quite big, but Wembley was massive. And I'd got 6 other guys that were my mates on stage with me, so I could get a little bit of bravado. And I thought, right, I'm going to get around the stage a little bit now, and do that type of thing. It's different again though when you go solo. Yeah, but then you've got a lot more entertaining you've got to do,
So, the first album's a hit. Then the second album comes out, and it's a huge hit, and it blows up in America. It's all over MTV. As I said, I'm 61, so I was the MTV generation. And I remember in college we would go back and we would watch the videos. So your stuff blows up. What does that do to an artist? I mean, when you sit there, and do you get inside your head and do you think you're bigger than you are, or what happens? Because you were huge, and do you sit there? It has to go to the ego.
Well, once again, I guess most people say I'm the most unstarry pop star when they meet me. I'm a regular guy, it never obsessed me. In a way, I'd look at people like Prince, I go, wow, that guy just music consumes him. It's in every part of his body, you know. And then I think, yeah, but he's never had a life, really. His life is his music, you know. But I was one of those people that thought, no, I like my downtime. I like my friends. I want to have a family, and so it's just a case of trying to get that balance, and which also keeps my feet on the ground. So if it went to my head a little bit, it would be mainly because there was so much work to be done, especially in America. Boy, when us poor old English kids come over to America and have to tour, can't believe the distance in between the cities, you know, and it's crazy. And then you're up doing TV shows in the morning, and it's absolutely, it's bank break. It's really tiring, you know. But at the same time, I fell in love with America to the point where I toured there extensively about 3 times. And then in the 90s, I started doing RV trips with my kids because I said, my bands sit in a tour bus and get to see the desert and all this stuff. I have to stay behind and do a TV show, and then I fly to the next gig, and I don't even know where I am. You know, I've got no idea. But sometimes it's the getting there and it's the seeing things. So I purposely I RV'd about 3 times with my family because I wanted to get to know America better. So as far as doing big places, I still had friends around me that would keep my feet on the ground. And if I was starry at all, it's because I was tired and I needed something, you know, and it wasn't forthcoming. And I go, I say, where's that, you know, such and such. But I don't often complain. I'm fairly easygoing.
Now, you moved to LA, right? You lived in LA for a while.
Yeah, I didn't move entirely. We just closed the house here and we went out there. The family was small at that time. There was just one. We'd got a daughter, and she was about kindergarten age. So we rented for 6 months in LA 1 year. And
where we're at, because I lived in Burbank. I lived in Burbank for 18 years. So I want to know where you live, because I always wonder, like Gary Newman bought like this castle in LA, and I know every English rock star, you guys all moved to LA for a little bit, then you all moved back. But where'd you live in LA?
Oh no, we were just renting for about 6 months at a time. So I remember I first did it when I decided to record half an album in America and half back home. So that was the other Voices album. So I came out then and I did a series of writing songs, and we started off. We rented an apartment just off of Sunset.
Okay.
I think a big apartment, like in Larrabee, and then when we moved out to record, we were I was recording out in the valley. So then we moved further out in the valley, and we got more of a sort of a home, which was much nicer for the family, and we could have people come and visit. And then I did a similar thing. I did some writing out there. Because I was going to do an album with Don Was about 89, and then 90, no, yeah, a bit later than that. And then I went out and recorded with Don in 93, which is one of my favourite albums, called The Crossing.
Now, how has your writing changed over the years? Because I always wonder, we all get older. That's just, it's a fact. And I think, like me with my comedy, my writing has changed. I don't give a crap anymore. I used to worry about the next gig. And now I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to throw this stuff out here. But how has your writing changed? As you know, because you've been a songwriter for years. But are you maturing as a songwriter? Are you happy how it progressed? Or what's up?
Songwriting was never the biggest part of my career. I was much better at hearing songs and thinking, that's a good song. The arrangement could be better, you know, and then I'd think, how can I do that and improve it or make it more current, you know. So I used to do that a fair amount. But I did do some writing. I did a few on the first album. Half of the songs were mine on the second, all of them on the third, half of them on the fourth. So I think my writing started to. I've never been one that has my heart on my. I might wear my heart on my sleeve in real life, but I'm not going to tell the world about it in a song like they do these days. Yeah, I'm no Taylor Swift. But what I do is write like stories, like film. I'd set up a story in my head, and act the whole thing out through the song, and that's the way I like to work. I think when I was writing the most material, I was young and a bit angry at the world, and the fact that back then, in the late 80s, we were under a microscope, and press could write pretty much what they wanted to about us, even if it wasn't true, and it's very, very hard to hold down any sense of normality, and that was when I started to get a bit angry in some songs, and it came out. But now I'm at this stage where I'll pick a scenario. I'm a big movie buff, I like Tarantino. I liked Tarantino when he was doing his films, but before that, I'd like the kind of quirky ones like Paris, Texas, and things like that, where there's a lot of thoughtfulness about them, and also small town stories, where there's not much for people to do, and they happen into the wrong job or something like that, and how their life takes a downturn. And so I would kind of write songs like that for a while. And now they're a mixture of both, the songs that I write.
So I want to ask you, because I always ask every person from England who's been on my show, and Gary Kemp from Spandau Ballet was on a few weeks ago, and I always ask, what was it like when you were on top of the Pops? Because I'm friends with lots of comedians, and in America, when you were a comedian, my friend Tom Dreesen, who used to open for Sinatra, he was living in his car, and he did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and the next day, he was signed by the biggest agency. He was opening for Julio Iglesias in Vegas. His life changed. What was Top of the Pops for you? A few times you did the Christmas show too, which I love Christmas songs. You did. How important is that to your career?
Top of the Pops was very important, and it only lost its importance when. But there then became more music shows like Channel 4 were competing with the Tube and a few other things like that. And now with the internet, we've got you can you can find anything anywhere. So Top of the Pops had its day, but in its heyday, it was very, very important to get on there, and it was like the Holy Grail as far as the record company was concerned. That everybody was hoping, as your record goes up, they'll go, we're trying to get you on Top of the Pops. Sometimes it happened, sometimes it didn't. But with Wherever I Lay My Hat, as that crept up the charts 3 spaces a week, and so Top of the Pops couldn't get enough of an artist like that, because they think, wow, he keeps going up, this is a new artist, we can jump on this, and there was plenty of time to it as well, because it went so slow. And so yeah, I got quite a lot of Top of the Pops, especially on the first album, and then not long after the first album had come to a close and I'm recording the second, in comes the Band-Aid record, so it's, yeah.
What was the first time like though? Were you nervous as shit? Like I know you guys have to. I don't know if you were in the part where you had to lip sync it, because some people say you had to lip sync it. But what was your first experience like? Because you're probably, I've heard that it's a dressing room with like 6 other artists. Like you guys are all. It's a cattle call basically. But what the first time when you sit there and you go, holy crap, I'm on Top of the Pops? What was your first experience like?
Well, my first experience was it's of the decor and everything looking so old as you go in, and the dressing rooms, and then that strange thing where you're up there on the stage on your own. I'm used to bigger stages with more people and more sort of musicians, and then you're there. Yeah, and it was the time when they were lip syncing, and I must have done so many daytime shows around that time, but as you say, it was the all-important Top of the Pops, and it was lip syncing. But I mean, I must have lip synced that song so many times. I knew every breath, every time I stopped, every little. It's got loads of ad libs at the end of the song, and also I was young enough to have a memory where I could remember what they were. But it's still very disconcerting, and you think, I hope I'm getting it right, And but it was a very big thing, and there was always that little bit of, I've got to be really nice to these people, because they ran the show, and you knew they ran the show, and it was a little bit like that, a bit scary.
Now tell me about Do they know it's well? First of all, I want to know why you love Christmas so much. You did the Top of the Pops Christmas song. You did Do They Know It's Christmas? Are you a big Christmas fan? Because I love Christmas. I don't. It's not Christmas to me until I hear the Band-Aid song, Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and Run DMC, Christmas in Hollis. And that's when I hear them. That's my trilogy. That's my Christmas trilogy. But what does Christmas mean to you?
Yeah, Christmas. Well, at that age, it was very, very important. Let's see. I'd done the Band-Aid record. No, I still hadn't become a dad at that point. But I still really enjoyed the Christmases, especially because I was so busy throughout the rest of the year. It's that time when your families come together and things like that. And I loved hearing all the old records. I'd make tapes up for my kids of them and things like that, to always get us in the mood, and I'd be playing them while they were opening their presents. I always think that music plays a big part in that kind of festive feeling.
Now, Band-Aid, Do They Know It's Christmas? You had lost your voice, I believe, before. So how did that all come about? What was the process? It's like I was talking to Gary Kemp, and he said they got a call, and Tony Hadley, I know you know Tony. Tony had told me a while ago, like, they got a call, and they just say they flew in. Like, they took a jet. It was like at the last minute. But how did you get involved with that? And you lost your voice, right?
No, I lost my voice. Well, I did. I lost it 6 months before because I remember I had to cancel a summer festival, an Elton John one, with Kool and the gang were on it, and that was at Wembley. And that would have been a big thing for me, but I had to pull out through exhaustion. I'd collapsed at a gig in Rhode Island. I just didn't have the strength. It was disappearing from my body, not just my voice, but my whole body. But then I'd recorded the second one by that point. I'd already recorded Every Time You Go Away, and that's a great vocal, so that was what I came back with. And so all that was sat there ready to go. We'd released a single in Europe, and then I did the Band-Aid record. We might have even put my album back a little bit because of the Band-Aid record, but it was ready to get a release at the beginning of 1995, And then from that came Every Time You Go Away.
So, what does it feel like to be a part of something that, honestly, it changed the world, and that's not being obtuse. It's just it did. That album changed and made awareness. I mean, you sing the opening. I mean, what was that like? Did they just sit there and call you and say, "Okay," you walk in, they go, "Hey, Paul, you're first line, you." What? Tell me about what happened.
Well, it was a kind of a big mess. I just watched it the other day because I keep telling stories about it, and then I think, have I got this right? And, because I always say that I got the middle part first, and it goes, "Here's to you, raise a glass for everyone," and I've got that bit. And so then I'd done that, and I thought that was it, But they asked me back again shortly after that, and asked me to try singing the first lines. Now, as I watched the documentary back, it seems like it happened much earlier than it did. I know that they tried a couple of other people on it, Tony Hadley, perhaps. Some people, like they said, it'd be too high for them. So at one point, Midge says, "Right, so whose key do you think it's in?" And so at that point, I must have been asked back to do the first two lines, and I didn't know that I was going to get them. But obviously, they made a decision fairly quickly because further on in the documentary, I see people fitting their voices in after mine, and so they must have made the decision without telling me,
So,
but everybody was nice, Everybody was really nice. If you watch it, everybody's rolled in from the four corners of Europe. I think who flew from Japan. I think that was Boy George, and so they just came in, and we're just so excited to be there, and up for making a record that's going to be one of the biggest charity records ever, you know, not knowing that it was going to go around the world. We're just talking about the UK, maybe Europe, you know. But then it carried on from there.
So what was playing Live Aid like? Because, you know, it's so funny. I'm always pissed off that I could have gone to Live Aid in Philadelphia. I could have gone. But I was down the Jersey Shore, so I didn't go. And it's funny, my wife, my now wife, said someone asked them to have tickets. There was no cell phones then, and she got the message 2 days later. But you played in Wembley. You played Live Aid. And I've talked to so many people who have done both sides. What was that like as an artist? Because it changed the world, and it was. I mean, there were so many people watching. I mean, back then we didn't have TV. They showed it on Channel 17 in Philadelphia. No TV. No, there was no conscience on TV. What was that like as an artist? What was going through your mind before you hit the stage? And then who were the people you met? That you probably met a bunch of your idols.
Yeah. I can't remember what was going on through my mind, other than we knew which songs we were going to do. We'd loosely arranged doing a little bit of It's Christmas Time, There's No Need to Be Afraid. We did that just at harmony, and then we started off the show. But then we'd also got Alison Moyet, who was going to get up and do a song with us, because my manager took me under his wing for a while when she just sacked a manager. And so she hadn't got a band, but she was asked if she wanted to appear, and the best way to do it was to do something with me. So we did go out, and we managed to get we announced the gig at the last minute at a Coliseum, a nice sized venue. And so we'd run it through the day before, and I think in my head I was just constantly going through, okay, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and we've got to keep it snappy and all that kind of thing, you know. Really just thinking about the gig and what I've got to do. But along the way, in between turning up and doing the show, there's so many other things that are right, Paul, you've got to be here, Paul, you've got to be there, you've got an interview with such and such, there's some autograph signing, they're going to be going off to a charity, you know, there's little clips of me signing things with Phil Collins, and we're both there, just signing away, and he goes, actually, while we're here, could you sign one for my son? You know, it's kind of freaky to get that from someone like Phil Collins. And yeah, it was overall, it was a really nice day. I mean, there's not a lot of egos going on. There wasn't when we made the record, and there didn't seem to be backstage either at Live Aid. So I got to meet most of Queen, because they were going to be getting changed in my caravan. That's all it was. It wasn't even as big as an RV. It was about 2/3 the size of an RV, and an English caravan. It doesn't have much in it apart from chairs, sofas, and what have you. So I was very surprised then to find out that Queen were using it as their dressing room after me, and I'd been caught on an interview, and my manager had to come and get me and say, "You've got to come back. You've got to get out of the caravan, because they're outside with their cases." So I apologised to Brian. Brian went, "Don't worry about it, take your time." But all the rest of the band had changed and they were off somewhere, and I had to be sharpish and get out.
So you go from all of that, your career is huge, and then you know the industry changes. And I want to hear, and I want to pronounce it right. I lived in LA. I know my Spanish. Los Pacaminos, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did Los Pacaminos come about? Because you were. I mean, it's. I love that when artists pull into their inner self, because I think everyone has an idea of, no matter how big you are, you have your certain roots, and you pull it. So how did Los Pacaminos come about?
Well, because I listened to many different things. Like I said, on the first album, African music and reggae played a part, you know, and then as time went on, we toured America more, so I think I started to get some more influences from there. And then when I was out in America, I started to hear the Texas Tornadoes, and things like that. And I know it doesn't matter to me if they're in the current trend or whatever. If I hear something and I think I like the sound of that, that sounds great, like a lot of fun. And I've just come to the end of a long time of touring. I just left actually CBS. My contract was fulfilled, 10 years. That's pretty good, And like I say, the last album I thought was one of the best ones I made, so it's a great one to go out on. We had Jeff Porcaro on there. There's so many great musicians. Billy Preston, Pino, and came over and played some bass. Tony Joe White, I'm a big fan of him. In fact, a lot of music from the South. So I just thought, right, I don't have a deal yet, so we're going to have to find another. I'm going to go and do a bit of writing in Nashville, and I love this Tex-Mex music, and so I want to pick up a guitar again, because with all the touring, I wasn't really playing an instrument much. I should have taken one on the road with me, but so I thought, right, no, I want to pick up a guitar and get a bit more proficient on that, and I want to sing something different, that's not expected of me, and something that will be great in a bar, so we can just play small venues unannounced. And I decided on Tex-Mex music, and I just happened to get the right group of people around me. And the drummer said that to me once: "You got a knack of getting great people around you," because the Q-Tips were firm friends, And the Paul Young solo band for a long time, we really looked after each other, And then I got the same thing with the Pacaminos, a bunch of guys that just found each other, were really good company to be with. But I didn't think it was going to last a long time. I thought, and then I did my album in '97, and I thought, right, that's it. I'm back on the Paul Young trail, and the Pacaminos, I'll say bye-bye to them. But the minute I came off that tour, I thought, right, what am I going to do now? I want to go back and do some more with Los Pacaminos, And I called everybody up, and next thing we know, it's 33 years.
Now you have a big tour coming up in the UK. Then you're coming to America with my buddy Jack Hughes from Wang Chung.
Yeah.
But you're doing a storytelling tour, and I think I do think that the future of music for '80s acts. We want to hear the stories. We want to hear you guys talk. I went to see Colin Hay, and he told great stories. He's been on my show, and Graham Parker, who I've become friends with, told great stories. What made you decide to do this UK tour where you're going to play, I think, both the first two albums, and then you're going to tell stories? What made you decide to do that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I did a book. A lot of these things, I think, came about, or a lot of these ideas were spawned around about the time of lockdown, So my girlfriend, who's now my wife, she was going, "You should do a coffee table book, about your influences, and just write a little bit about each artist or something like that, So she was trying to get me going on that thought, and I was going, I don't know, you'll have to chase all the photographers for permission and all things like that, And it was a bit of a job for one man to take on. But then a strange coincidence happened whereby after the two lockdowns, somebody got in touch with my agent, and he'd done a couple of book tours where you just write a coffee table book about whatever you want, but and then you go out and you tell stories and do a few songs, or not, as the case may be. And so John Lydon had done one, and somebody else had done one, and he said, "Do you fancy doing it?" And so I thought, a book, maybe I should, and maybe I'll write it about the big 10 years with CBS, so that way I can keep my personal life out of it and just talk about music, and what happened along the way, how I got Stevie Wonder to play harmonica on a track on my fourth album, so then I could return the favour, because he's coming to Wembley, and we're all going to sing up, and we're all going to sing Happy Birthday to him. So I'm there. There's me. There's Kurt from Tears for Fears. There's Cyndi Lauper. There's Chaka Khan. There's Billy. I forgot his name. No, I'm having a senior moment there. Billy Ocean. So I played back the thing, because he played the harmonica on my track, and now we've surprised him by doing this. Then I meet Chaka Khan, and I tell her that on the album. I'm doing a song she did when she was 17 with Rufus. And when I tell her it's the Bobby Womack song, could Stop On By, she went, "Oh, I'm a mad fan of Bobby Womack." I said, "I am too," you know. And she said, "How's it going?" I said, "Well, we're not done yet, you know." So she said, "Well, we should do it together." So then ended up, I got a duet with Chaka, and it's a wonderful one. And so all these things started to happen and come together. And I got Dave Gilmore to play on one of the tracks because I'd done a charity show for him for free, you know. So I said, "Can you return the favour and play a bit of guitar on this track?" He went, "Yeah, sure," you know. And it's great to be able to work with these people until I eventually got to the point where I was with LA's Greatest in 1992, you know.
So will you miss when you're doing that storytelling tour, and then you come and do this tour in America? Will you miss the storytelling tour? Because to me, it's, as I said, stories. I did a storytelling show a few weeks ago, and I was nervous as shit. I'm a stand-up. I do joke, but I had to tell a story with laughs.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, when you tell these stories, and we're engrossed in it, we love it because everyone wants to be a musician. Will you miss that when you come to the tour? And then it's a great tour. You got John Waite, you got Wang Chung, you got Rick Springfield. I mean, will you miss the story part? Because God, that's like bearing your soul. I mean, how do you shift?
Oh, that's kind of easy to do. In fact, what's happening at the moment is it's working very well because as a gentle warm up to the acoustic tour or the book tour, as we call it, because we're doing sort of 5-6 songs acoustically as well as the stories and showing the videos. So I'm playing with Los Pacaminos for 3 shows, and that's great to get me back into it again because it's all songs all night long, but I'm not singing everything. Drew's got a lovely voice, and we share the and Jamie, and we share the vocals. So it's going to be a nice, easy way to get back into gigging again. Because I don't know if you know, I broke my leg back in last September, and I've been on crutches for 6 months.
How'd you break your leg? What happened? Because
I slipped on some wet steps in the Greek islands, and I had an operation that went horribly wrong, and I had to have a second one in December.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny about that? My friend Wendy Liebman, she's a big comedian in America. She got hit by a car, and she both legs got broke, and they screwed it up. The pin was wrong, so she had to sit there after being bedridden for like 2 months. They had to re-break it. Did they have to re-break your leg?
Ooh, no, but the pin broke in my leg and everything shifted. So the second operation was a case of taking everything out and then putting it back in again.
So let me ask you, what do you think made the 80s so great? I always like to ask people this. What do you think made, we sat there, and I grew up in a generation of, I went to the hairstylist and asked for your hair. And what made the 80s so great? What makes it so memorable is that there was a fusion of fashion, culture, music, art. The whole thing was all starting to come together. But music embraced it all, and down to artwork, clothes, the whole thing, with fashion, so many artists, and like even now they're doing it with perfumes and God knows what else, to have an association with an artist. So the 80s kind of spawned all that, and so there was not just so much to listen to. They were great. The Police were heavily influenced by reggae, so were Culture Club, but Duran Duran weren't, and Spandau, they were influenced by something else. And then there's me, who's still into R&B, but he's trying to dress it out in a different way. You've still got, from the 70s left over, Peter Gabriel still making great music, David Bowie still making great music, that we forget about. They were in the 80s, they were the 80s too. So how can you not go back to it and find something that you think is great? There's such a big choice. And I think that's what people go back to it again and again and again. 2 final questions. One, looking back at your career, and you've had a very successful career, what are a few of your proudest moments? It can be professional, it can be personal, but what are 2 of your proudest moments?
I think my dad was really worried that I wanted to quit to become a musician, and my proudest moment was when I got well, first when I made it big in the UK, and I think he realised he could stop sweating, and and then when I got the number one in America, and I toured Japan, and he'd always ask me, where's the most amazing place that you've played? And I went, well, Japan, really, because it's just so different. We hadn't back then. We hadn't absorbed their culture as much as we have now. I said it's just so different to where we live, And he would have a lot of questions about it. So it really made me happy to go around to the house and say, I'm doing Japan again this year, Dad, and I wonder if you and Mum wanted to come. So I got them tickets, and they flew and went on the whole Japan tour, rode the bullet train, did the whole thing, And I'm really kind of proud that they got to see that all the worry was worth it. Doing Live Aid, obviously, because it's such a landmark moment. I think I did a great performance on the Freddie Mercury AIDS charity. That I still managed to hold down a family life, and yeah,
give me one great '80s story before we go. I want to hear a great '80s music story because I always like to hear these. I remember someone who was it? Mike Peters from the Alarm. He's told me a story how he was taking a pee next to Joe Strummer and Joey Ramone at one night, and I love stories again. Give me a great '80s story before we get out of here.
Oh wow! Okay, I've got to think of something that's not too embarrassing.
Give me an embarrassing one. Fuck it.
Okay. Well, it's not so much embarrassing, but we did 2 nights at Sydney Entertainment Centre, and we've been on the road. This was the 15-month world tour after every time we go away, so it's about 85, and we were carrying our own staging around the world. So they'd roll out the same flooring every night. And the first night at Sydney Entertainment Centre, that flooring had taken a battering of drinks and bits and pieces and all that stuff. So I was sound checking, and then I went to do a little spin as I was sound checking, and my shoe got stuck on the flooring, And I said, "This is ridiculous. I could have twisted my knee there, So that's got to be cleaned." They didn't have time to do it for the first show, so I went out. I did my usual thing, running around the place, knee slides, and I'd worked out that I could knee slide right up to, and I know exactly how to stop. So I look at one girl, and I run at her, I drop to my knees, I slide, and then lean back a bit, and then that stops me, and I sing. And they visibly pull back because they think I'm going to come off the stage. Well, the second night, the stage manager was so upset that I'd been peed off with the stage, an ice rink on the second night I went out, and I had to run to the side and go, "Can you get some gaffer tape to put on my shoes so I don't slide all over the place?" But I forgot all about my knees, so when I went to do the knee slide, I went straight off the side of the stage into that great big gap that's in between the stage and the crowd, and I dislocated 2 ribs in my they came out the backbone. They were dislodged.
That was great. Thank you so much. People, go look up Paul Young. If you're in the UK, and I played in the UK, go see his tour. He's going to tell you stories. And then when you're in America, I'm going to go see him I think he's in Atlantic City in July. I'm going to go down because, and I know John, I know all these great guys. But people, go check it out. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 1,000 episodes there. You can email me at coopertalk.net. I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guest. Don't remember, drink your water, eat your vegetables, and take your vitamins. Have a great day. Thank you.